the fourth day of campaigning for GE 2020. It's a week to polling day. We have all the highlights from the morning and afternoon on today's Big Story. Hello, I'm Olivia Quay.
And I'm Dylan Ng. Now subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
Now, the 10 million population figure continues to be a talking point of the election campaign for the second day in a row. At a walkabout this morning, Deputy Prime Minister Heng Keat reiterated the importance of not spreading falsehoods.
Just yesterday, Foreign Affairs Minister Vivian Balakrishnan called for the Singapore Democratic Party to clarify its position on the 10 million population figure, as the claim was a key plank of its campaign.
Deputy Prime Minister Heng Keat said spreading falsehoods with no basis is not the right kind of politics. This latest salvo came after the Singapore Democratic Party declared success on Thursday night for getting an assurance from the PAP that it has no intention of increasing the population to 10 million.
You erect a bogeyman and then after that you declare success. I personally feel all along that integrity is very important. The reason why so many of our businesses have been doing well overseas is that Singaporeans are known to have integrity. So we must keep honesty and integrity in our system, and we must expect that of all candidates.
The PAP had called for SDP chief Chee Juan to admit that his party's campaign was based on a falsehood, withdraw it, and apologize to Singaporeans for misleading them. On a walkabout outside Bukit Batok MRT station on Thursday, Dr. Chee said the figure was also cited by several other people, which was why the SDP asked the PAP to set the record straight.
The residents are now saying, okay, 10 million. And they were saying it's so good that SDP has brought this up and we put a stop to it. So we're glad that at least one of the issues that we've raised, the government has clarified.
This morning, leaders of the Progress Singapore Party and Workers' Party said that the government should have clarified its position earlier.
I don't want to, mistakenly paraphrase what the PAP has said or what the SDP has said, but it seems to be, an issue because of the nature of POFMA and the nature of this of falsehoods. How do we describe a falsehood? We know it's a false statement of fact, but when you have ministers in the past who make allusions to we possibly could have a larger population size, then I think there is room for fair comment about really what is the size that you're aiming towards. I think most reasonable people would come to that conclusion, but of course there could be different positions, and now the ministers have come out to make it clear. I think it was Minister Vivian Balakrishnan who said, we're not even going to reach 6.9. So one of the things I don't understand is why can't these things actually come up, well before the elections? I mean, it's the government's position, so it should state that very clearly.
PSP Chief Tan Cheng Bok said that if the data is not given, people would speculate, and called for the government to be more transparent with its information. Mr. Heng was asked at a forum in 2019 about Singapore's population white paper. He mentioned former HDB Chief Executive Mr. Liu Tai Ke, who had raised the notion that Singapore should plan for 10 million people for it to remain sustainable in the long term. But Mr. Heng didn't say Singapore should plan for 10 million people, nor did he mention the figure, and his point was that social space is also important. In the walkabout on Friday, Mr. Heng also highlighted that parties should instead focus on seeking to serve Singaporeans.
The country is facing major challenges ahead, so let's not get distracted. Let's focus on the key issues at hand, and let's see how we can create a better life for all Singaporeans. This is the core issue of this election.
Mr. Heng is the anchor minister in East Coast GRC and was accompanied by outgoing East Coast MP Lee Yi-hsian and new face Tan Kiat Hao.
Dr. Chee's fellow SDP member Paul Tambaya said the public shouldn't trust either party, but read about the issue for themselves. Speaking during a walkabout in Bukit Panjang SMC, he added that PAP had, quote, plenty of opportunities to clarify. The Straits Times article in which the 10 million figure was mentioned was published in March 2019. Mr. Tambaya added that the fixation on the figure is a distraction from the election.
Joining us to discuss today's developments is news editor Zakir Hussain, who's leading the Straits Times' GE 2020 coverage. Zakir, let's first talk about the timing of all of this. Now, SDP unveiled its 4 Yes, 1 No campaign in late April. The 1 No, of course, refers to PAP's supposed plans to raise our population to 10 million. Why is this becoming such a talking point now and not earlier, say, when the slogan was first released, or even when the ST article was published in March 2019?
I think when the SDP launched its manifesto, we were then sort of in the middle of COVID, and I think the news cycle meant that it wasn't an issue that many parties kind of jumped on or seized upon. And even when the Straits Times article was published, we now noticed that there were some online commentators who leapt on that 10 million figure and presumably took our report out of context. I think it only surfaced and caught attention now because it's become such a prominent part of the SDP's election campaign. And the point when it was raised during the debate on Wednesday night, it was clear that the claims that were being made about that 10 million figure were clearly false. And I think that was why we had to clarify that in our reports as well.
Now, Zakir, do you agree with Mr. Tambaya that this has been a distraction from the bread and butter issue like jobs, housing, our economic recovery, as well as our COVID-19 response?
I don't think so. I think in an election, voters look at many issues. Bread and butter issues, of course, are key. So are jobs and the economy. But at the same time, issues like whether claims are true or false and the integrity of candidates are also points that voters and parties do raise and surface. And I think all sides try to raise a variety of issues, in their bid to win over voters. And I think that's the same consideration that voters have when they decide who they're going to vote for.
Okay. Well, let's go on to something else. The first constituency political broadcast, well, that starts tonight. Now, this is a never-before-done concept. So, Zakir, what do you think the candidates will address tonight, since they're given a nationwide platform, albeit with a 3-minute time limit?
Well, I think it's a 3-minute time limit for candidates in a single seat. But in a GRC, a team of 5 candidates have up to 5 minutes. Have up to 15 minutes. It's 3 times the number of candidates in the seat. I expect they will raise a number of issues. I think the primary focus would be constituency issues. How they plan to improve conditions and facilities in that estate or in that GRC. But at the same time, I think they're mindful also that voters do look at national issues, and I think some of these can expect to be raised, at the constituency broadcasts. So, for instance, issues like jobs or issues like unemployment benefits. Parties especially smaller parties that are contesting a number of seats, will use their constituency broadcasts to kind of make these points and make their pitch about these policies of theirs, to explain why residents should vote for them.
Now, we've seen so many ways the parties have used the online platform to get their message across. Do you think the job they've done so far has made up for the fact that there aren't physical rallies?
I think so. In fact, I think they've been, having watched online rallies and the online activities for the past 3 days now, I think all parties seem to be getting the hang of these online rallies. And in the past, where, for instance, a speaker would have, say a speaker speaking at 2 of his party's rallies on the same night would start at 8 p.m. At one rally. And then when he finishes, would rush to be one of the final speakers at another rally. With an e-rally, he can address both audiences at the same time. And I think parties have also taken to different formats. So you've got parties doing fireside chats, doing talk shows, doing what they call straight talk sessions, doing webinars. And, I think even in a non-COVID election down the road in future years, I think we can expect this online campaigning to be more or less a permanent fixture of elections here.
Right. Well, that was our news editor, Zakir Hussain. Zakir, thanks as always for coming on the show.
The PAP has made jobs one of the central issues in this crisis election. Speaking on PAP's campaign show Straight Talk, Trade and Industry Minister Chan Chun Sing said that when it comes to creating tech and digital jobs, it's critical to get the talent with right skills, both local and foreign.
I think our strategy is to make sure that we bring in the investment, create the jobs here first, and then quickly ramp up our own local training to fuel up this job progressively. But of course, it will never be a case whereby we will replace every foreigner with the Singaporean. And it's also not desirable because we need that local-foreign complement. We need that diversity because we're competing on the international market. Yeah. But I think what Singaporeans are more concerned with is somewhere in the middle. So those are, let's say, our polytechnic graduates. I don't think our polytechnic graduates are afraid of competition. They just want to make sure that there's fair competition. And this is where we come in and say that you can't just undercut the salaries of our polytechnic graduates.
Mr. Chan also spoke about the uncertainty brought on by COVID-19. On that, he said Singapore has demonstrated its ability to adapt quickly in a crisis thanks to a uniquely Singaporean trait.
The question is always, who can adapt faster amidst the COVID situation? The thing that cheers us is that if anybody can do it, we must be one of them. Because everybody is facing the same challenges of being disrupted.
Does this tie back to our kiasuism in Singapore?
Yes,
must be the first one to do it.
Yes, actually, kiasuism is not a bad thing. Yes. You see, because we are concerned about how to catch up and we are afraid of losing. So actually, with that kind of attitude, we keep ourselves very tuned into the international markets. Yes.
Top party leadership was seen on Walkabouts early this morning. At Block 628 Ang Mo Kio Avenue 4, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong was spotted introducing the party's candidate for Yio Chu Kang SMC, former Group Chief of the Silver Generation Office, Mr. Yip Hon Wing.
And in Punggol Way, WP Chief Pritam Singh and Chairman Sylvia Lim were showing their support for their Punggol West candidate, Ms. Tan Chen Chen. And from Teck Whye to Tanjong Pagar, PSP Secretary General Dr. Tan Cheng Bock was also making the rounds today. He arrived at ABC Food Centre with fellow member Mr. Lee Hsien Yang. Both joined a walkabout with the party's Tanjong Pagar team.
During this election period, the Straits Times will be coming to you live 3 times a day with the latest GE 2020 developments. At 1 p.m, we have Editor's Take, a special lunchtime show where our editors offer their views on the hustings.
Then there's The Big Story at 5:30 p.m. And at 10 p.m, our special election show, GE 2020 Today. You can catch all the highlights from the first constituency political broadcast on tonight's episode.
The Straits Times GE 2020 microsite will also keep you updated. Go to this link for our GE live blog as well. Here's an update on the COVID-19 situation here. 169 new cases were reported today, taking Singapore's total to over 44,400. Today's count includes 11 community cases, comprising 3 Singaporeans or permanent residents and 8 work pass holders.
There are also 3 imported cases who were placed on stay-home notice after arriving in Singapore. Migrant workers living in dormitories continue to make up the majority of the other cases, and more details will be announced later tonight.
Singapore retail sales in May suffered their largest year-on-year fall amid the second month of circuit breaker measures. Retail sales plunged by 52.1%, with sales excluding motor vehicles falling by 45.2%. May was the 16th straight month that retail sales have dropped, but the sector is expected to begin recovering as the economy reopens.
19 schools have had more than half of their Primary 1 places filled by siblings of current pupils after the first phase of registration. They include Princess Elizabeth Primary School, Nanhua Primary School, Pei Hua Presbyterian Primary School and Rosyth School. For comparison, in last year's registration exercise, only 7 schools had filled more than half of their places after Phase 1. The registration exercise is conducted over 7 phases and will end on October 30th.
IT instructor turned magician S. Chandran was convicted of 3 counts today of helping others make bogus claims under the Productivity and Innovation Credit Scheme. 1 man and 2 women had filed fraudulent claims under the scheme, causing the Inland Revenue Authority of Singapore to disburse more than $24,000 to each of them, of which half went to Chandran, who helped them create the claims. The 39-year-old is out on bail and will be sentenced on August 14th. Chandran still has 55 other pending charges against him. He told the court that he will not be pleading guilty to them.
Taking a look at the global headlines, British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested in the US and charged with sex trafficking minors for her former boyfriend, Jeffrey Epstein. Maxwell's whereabouts had been unknown following Epstein's suicide. She now faces 6 counts relating to his sex crimes. Prosecutors allege that Maxwell helped Epstein groom girls as young as 14 years old between 1994 and 1997, and that in some instances she was present for and participated in the sexual abuse of victims. She could face life in prison if found guilty. Epstein was arrested in July 2019. He hanged himself in Manhattan's Metropolitan Correctional Center in August last year while awaiting trial on charges of trafficking minors for sex.
The implementation of China's new security law has seen Hong Kongers scrubbing their social media accounts and deleting chat histories. The new powers came into effect on Tuesday, making certain political views such as wanting independence outlawed overnight. Local police have been granted wider surveillance powers to monitor suspects, including wiretapping and accessing digital communications, all without a judge's approval. One popular Telegram group used by pro-democracy protesters told users, "We will clear all the messages for your safety. Please watch what you say." Meanwhile, companies providing VPN tools have reported a spike in downloads since the law was announced.
The US reported nearly 55,000 new COVID-19 cases yesterday, the largest daily increase any country has ever reported. The count came as it heads into the July 4th holiday weekend. Just 2 weeks ago, the US was reporting about 22,000 new cases a day.
With Singapore well underway into phase 2 of reopening, life will still not revert to what it used to be. To inspire and uplift readers in this new normal, the Straits Times commissioned 30 works by local writers and artists on the COVID-19 pandemic and what it will be like when all this is over. This was done with the support of the National Arts Council as part of the SG Culture Anywhere campaign. Today, we feature opera company The Opera People's To Our Distant Beloveds. Have a look.
Al cielo, la stella mia sei tu, sul mio cammino, tu m'accompagna e segui il mio destino, tu sei la vita e la felicità.
To Our Distant Beloveds will feature songs spanning the 18th to the 20th centuries, the company's picks for music that resonates during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, we're very pleased to be joined by the co-founders of the Opera People. Now, welcome, guys. Let's start with Jonathan. Now, Jonathan, for a start, could you tell us more about the Opera People?
Well, we're one of the newest opera companies in Singapore. I think we started, actually this weekend is going to be our 2-year anniversary. And we've actually, come to think of it, it feels like a long time ago because we've had 2 full productions and many other concerts and programs, mainly centering around the Western art form of opera, but also all the other Western vocal music art forms.
Now, Shrida, what was the one biggest challenge you faced when coming up with the songs to pick for To Our Distant Beloveds?
So as we know, with the current situation, I think that it's very hard for us to come together to make music. I mean, even in phase 1, it was actually really difficult to sort of physically meet and rehearse and look at the songs. So what we really did was to choose pieces that we were familiar with, but also pieces that we felt resonated very much with the themes of loss and uncertainty and yearning that were very much a part of the sort of pandemic experience, the universal pandemic experience.
Now, finally, Jonathan, what is the message that you guys hope to put across to your audience when they watch the performance?
I think we want them to know that us as artists, we're also trying our best to carry on doing what we do in these uncertain times, and that is to bring the message of music and love and longing to our audiences, even if we can't physically be with them, to still find ways to share this craft and this art form with them.
Well, thanks very much for taking the time to speak with us, guys. It's been a pleasure. I've been speaking to the Opera People's Jonathan Tay and Shrida Mani. Now you can watch the full performance at the Straits Times website and see the other works part of this series.
Okay, so during this election period, the Straits Times will be coming to you live 3 times a day with the latest GE 2020 developments. At 1 p.m, we have Editor's Take, where our editors offer their views on the hustings.
Then there's The Big Story at 5:30 p.m, and at 10 p.m, our special election show, GE 2020 Today. The highlights from the first constituency political broadcast will be on tonight's episode.
The Straits Times' GE 2020 microsite will also keep you updated. Go to this link for our GE live blog as well.
Thanks for watching The Big Story. I'm Dylan Ang with Olivia Quay. We'll be back tomorrow. See you then.